Hello, Froggy here, and today we break into the Thunderdome. That's where Oryx sometimes sends you in between damage phases to fight against mini Oryx. But, as Oryx should know, the darkness does not give, it takes. So let's see what it takes to break into the Thunderdome on our own terms. I've been putting this one off for a little bit because I didn't quite have all the tools I needed for the job. But I managed to pick up Touch of Malice from an LFG run. They were also nice enough to get me the catalyst after, though that isn't quite needed for this. This is definitely one of my more involved runs. We did it with a group of 6 people with 4 different roles with their own requirements, plus a group to 5-man totems. I've prepared this handy map to help keep track of who needs to be where when. But before we get into much of that, we need to do the entrance. This starts Phase 1, the sort of pre-setup. You can do this with only 2 people. One of them will need to be on a Warlock. The left side is a bit less demanding. Just run from the left like I did there, and give a nice timed punch. You can climb up the rock and melee right over. Of course, you're going to want to wait for your buddy on the right to make the final dunk. The right side is a little trickier. You need to run over here where the platforms appear, and if you jump right about at the end of each platform, you should be able to make it across. You'll need an Icarus dash to make the last jump, though. Once again, just wait on your leftwards, buddy, and you'll be good to go. You'll want to take out the sniper vandals when they pop up, because those will make your life a bit harder, as well as the enemies that sometimes respawn to guard the dunk points. You'll want to leave the taken shield in place to help block against the other enemies. After each dunk, it's pretty easy to just jump right back across and get the next one. Do this 6 times and you'll have the gate open in no time. And I guess we might as well grab the loot while we're here. You could, of course, just grab a ship's CP, but that's not the easiest checkpoint to track down. For this next part, we'll be starting the climber role. You could be doing this part solo, but it is definitely faster with 2. The important part is do not touch the ship yet. If you do that, you're going to have to restart from the ship's checkpoint. You can see Skyshock is zooming on ahead because he's using Eager Edge, although that isn't strictly speaking necessary. You want to make sure to go above the lights here to avoid triggering the shield wall. While that doesn't end the run, it does mean you're going to need a lot more people to get past that door every time. And now it's ice climbing time. We're just going to be stasis climbing up. If you manage to get a good duo climb, this will go a fair bit faster. Perhaps even twice as fast. I'll go ahead and edit out most of the waiting here. Part 1 of the climbing gets a little trickier the higher you go. You could technically stasis climb all the way up, but you'll notice that there's kind of an invisible funnel thing that pushes you to the side, which can make it very hard, especially if you're trying to get multiple people on the same crystal. I would recommend switching to Hoarfrost Z for the last couple little bits. The next part is particularly tricky if you want to go quickly. Eventually you'll be able to jump up and hit the teleport. You'll need to quickly throw a grenade below you because catapult lift will not work at all if you've been teleported upwards. And now we've just got a fairly long climb. The original version of this route that I had in mind used the IRB from my first King's Fall video, and that involved a stasis climb that was several times longer than this one. So you should consider yourself lucky that this is the majority of the stasis climbing we need to do. While it will go faster with 2 or perhaps even more people, it is still fairly lengthy. I suppose there's no real reason to have you sit through the whole thing. So let's just skip to the top. It can kind of sneak up on you, so don't freak out when you hit the ring. And we've finally made it. At this point, you're going to want to bring in the holder. Anyone who joins while you're in this zone at this point will go to the start of the ship's jumping puzzle. And while it's possible to get away without someone holding that zone, it is deeply unpleasant to get back there beyond this point. So I'm going to be swapping over to Warlock now for the Warlock role. Unfortunately, with the current route, only a Warlock can get all the way to the Thunderdome. Nev was nice enough to join to give me someone to swap on. There are 2 ways you can get past the door into the Totem's encounter. The simplest is just racing the door spawn. If you're able to skate, you'll find this pretty trivial. I, however, am not a very fast frog, so you'll get to see my half-hearted attempt to move slightly faster with Eager Edge. But luckily, every once in a while, the door takes absolutely forever to spawn in, and that was enough, I guess. If you're somehow slower than me, you can also use the fallback point, conveniently located at the Totem's Encounter flag area. You'll want to use Salvation's Grip, and luckily this is pretty soloable. I've got low light and ricochet rounds on so that I can quickly die. And we're at the flag. Now we just need to do the res breach out. Luckily, with current res breach tech, it's pretty easy. You just want to line yourself up with this little jagged bit of gunk and then go straight into this crouch spot. You can use explosives to kill yourself if you're not on sticky nades, but the tick damage will get you eventually. And there we go, managed to get it. If you don't, you'll just want to run back up top to reset your res and try again. We're getting close to the point that requires us to be a Warlock now. Technically a Hunter could do this as well, but you're going to have to do this on a Warlock eventually, so no real point in bringing a Hunter into the mix. Once you're down here, swap over to Void. You want to have your Astrocyte verse up to make your blink a little bit longer, because we will be blinking through a barrier. Just run up and see about where it is, maybe mark it, and it is a pretty simple blink to get through. And that's all we need Void for, so just swapping back onto the nice and easy to control Solar. We'll be doing this route twice, although the second time it will be much higher stakes, so I would get your practicing in now. Because of the upward slope, we can just run back there and jump right up to the top. Hitting this load can be pretty tricky. I have the most luck just jumping into it and floating down. It'll teleport you up once, and then the second time you'll be safe. If you die to this load, you're in a bit of trouble, because there is no getting back out of Golgoroth's cellar. At least, not without fallback points. Or joining on someone in a different zone. So I would definitely recommend hitting that load several times to make sure you've got the hang of it. You don't want to mess that up when you're on the final part of this route. But we're still in the setup phase. I'd say that ends right about when we hit the next load, because that's when you can start getting everyone into their positions for the glitch. You'll want to go ahead and hit Transept right around here. It doesn't really matter if you die to the load, but it's more convenient if you don't. You can cross over to the other side right around here, and this will be our first practice for just floating along as a Warlock. Because of the Starfire protocol I'm wearing, I get 2 fusion nades for heat rising, so it gives quite a lot of hang time. I've got Eager Edge to let myself move a little bit farther, and of course Icarus Dash. It makes crossing these gaps quite easy and safe. We're just about at the point that everyone will want to get to. So let's switch over to the spotting role. You'll want to be sure whoever's in Transept is Fire Team Leader. Anyone who joins will just have to go to the end of the jumping puzzle and then use this handy intangible wall to get out. Unfortunately, one doesn't simply walk into Threshold. We'll have to do a hub IRB. Line yourself up with this corner, and then die to set your ghost point here. You'll need to have someone stay back to get your res. And we're just going to jump on up here. There's a kind of disc that you can jump on, although I'm failing at it here. There we go. And now we're just going to jump around into the door. We will have to do this IRB later in the Warlock role. You just land on top, walk left, get teleported, and walk left again. And you need to be able to see your ally on your screen, and then they'll be able to res you. Why don't you just move around slightly until you show up. Now let's go ahead and get into position. There are plenty of different ways to get there, but I find this one is probably the easiest. We're just going to go around the back side of the tower. Push barrier's a little close here, so watch out for that. And the other nice thing about this route is you get to see the chess pieces. Hello, chess pieces. Just gotta crouch under this section here, and when we get in position, you'll actually be able to stand, which is nice and convenient. And I think we went a little bit too far. Here we go. Because you can stand, you can actually sword fly directly here, but that is a little bit trickier. And if your brightness is high enough, you just might see the Thunderdome below. Our target is very precise, so you're going to want to switch your mountaintop over to volatile launch and a counterbalance stock to get it accurate enough. It's pretty hard to see what's going on down there, but if you drop down below, the Thunderdome becomes a lot easier to see. You don't actually have to do this, and it won't help too much, but if you just want to get an idea for the shape, here's what it looks like. Let's just highlight what we're dealing with here. The target for the IRB is this tiny region here. I would aim mountaintop shots at these points to make it easy to track down. To get that sort of precision, we're going to need to have a high zoom sniper rifle. My normal flavor of Aachen doesn't work for this, but luckily it comes in energy as well. Just gotta straighten out the color situation here. Much better. I would recommend firing some shots to make sure that you aren't standing on the invisible ground before you fire a rocket at your feet. Carefully line up a shot, and you'll be ready to fire whenever the Warlock and Climber teams get into position. But that might take a while. Luckily, you can run these routes concurrently, but for some reason that is less easy to follow on a video. The distance is a bit too far to see your shot actually hit, but as you can see from this stasis nade, it is in fact solid. Now it's time to set the IRB point for the Warlock and Climber groups. You'll notice that there's a bit of a ceiling on this ledge, but if you move to the side, you can avoid it. This allows a Warlock to jump up to this first layer with just heat rises. Titan can of course use a stasis nade to climb that. Once up top, you just need to die anywhere, because this is where we'll be IRBing out to from the Totem's encounter load. You can also jump up using heat rises and a shot from the mountaintop. I'll be showing that method a bit later. With your IRB point set, you just have to make it back to the Totem's load, without dying, of course. On Warlock, having Starfire Protocol, Fusion Nades, and Max Discipline will help you float your way across, as well as Icarus Dash and a sword, preferably with Eager Edge. The floor might not show up, but don't worry, once you get to the Blight, it definitely is below you. Luckily, this bit of the route is pretty uneventful. We're just going back the way we came. It's very hard to miss the Golgoroth cellar load, so you don't have to worry too much about that. One little annoying thing about this route is that the only way to keep going up ahead is the only path that it looks like you can't take. That black circle thing is the only way to get through. From here, it is convenient to jump on top, and then just make your way back to around where we had originally jumped up. Getting a consistent depth load here took a bit of trial and error, but eventually we figured out that it's very easy to hit if you kind of hug this last cylinder here. Just keep going and you should die to the Basilica load. Once anyone in the group manages to do this, it's time for the Autorez. Finally, it's time for the holder to do something. It's now actually very important that you stand on the ship, because this activates a trigger that will allow us to actually update our checkpoint up ahead. As you can see, I'm finally using my eager-edged sword to fly. You'll want to stay above the lights, because if you fail to do that, you're going to have other people come stand on the plates, and then they'll have to do their setup phase again. It doesn't end the route, but it does make things a bit less convenient. You can get to around this point while everyone else is doing their route, but don't enter the room because the Autorez will trigger shortly after going inside, as long as someone had already climbed up. Right about there, in fact. After the Autorez is triggered, you might as well go up the lift to offer an anchor point for when people join to do the first encounter. Just be sure you don't start it early, or you're going to make a lot of people very sad. When it's time to have people join, make sure you go into the Basilica load. Otherwise, they're all going to have to do the jumping puzzle. And with how long this takes, you don't need it to be longer. Anyways, once the Autorez is triggered, you'll find yourself out of box in Basilica. Just stick around here until everyone has hit the route and res them and you'll be on your way. Next up, climbing up to the top. Warlocks can stasis climb, but it is a little bit less convenient. Unfortunately, I couldn't figure out a way to get this route to work on Titan, so that's why we have to have 2 other people here. It would be significantly easier if we could just do the whole thing on Titan. Once you get to the top, I would recommend running around the outside. This will make it so that you have multiple spawn points up here. It's kind of easy to accidentally have someone standing where you'd be respawning, and if that happens, you'd be out of luck. And now it's time to coordinate with the spotters. Make sure they're in position, and get your Touch of Malice down to 1 ammo so you can die in air easily. You might be able to substitute fighting line, but that's pretty tough. Jump off and have your spotters fire. The shots will stick around in midair if they have sticky nades on. I would line up your reticule with one and your feet with the other, and that should give you the accuracy you need. Later on I'll show you a little trick, but for now let's keep going to the next checkpoint. I'd recommend throwing a nade or something to get a boost on the height, because half crystals are not very tall. You have 2 choices here. The first is to aim for about the height of the arch and go all the way. The second is to aim for the bottom of the arch and then stasis climb up. Given that Z climbing was recently nerfed, you'll probably want to do less of it if you can at all manage it. You might even have to put 3 people on a single crystal now, or maybe some Heart of Inmost Light shenanigans. If you try to go direct, you're going to be climbing for about 5 minutes here. As soon as you feel you're high enough, the Titan should swap back to sword flying gear. And you'll want to use Heat Rises on a Warlock to gracefully glide over. Just make sure you keep up the charge. With High Discipline you can get 3 grenades worth of floating. And the Titans just swordfly to join you. If we had done it a bit earlier, it would have been a little bit more hectic, so I wouldn't try this unless you're very comfortable with your stasis climbing. So the Titans are now swapping their gear over to stasis climbing set. And I'm just going to float over to the arches. I have to make sure that I'm high enough to land on the crystal that the Titan sits down. And then we can just stasis climb up. This method is a bit less forgiving, but it's definitely loads quicker. You can't mantle at the top of this, unfortunately, so you'll have to make sure you climb high enough. However you do that, next up, we have another climb. Originally, we were doing a very long version of this. We climbed all the way above the Basilica box to drop in from the other side. This amount of height is excessive, though. It is, however, safer. If you do this, you're going to want to aim towards that pillar on the left. If you go into the center, you're going to hit an intangible barrier that you can only see from the other side. Ask me how I know. It's not fun to waste a 15-minute climb, so you'll want to be extra careful here. Pop heat rises when you get down to 3 seconds, and once you've used all 3 of your nades, you can pop your super to get to the other side. Those of you who were paying attention to the background may have noticed something pretty interesting. I tried to fly out to it from another kind of ping-pong table artifact, which I sadly did not grab a clip of, but I ran out of sword ammo. Luckily, Eddle made it all the way there. I have no idea what this mysterious structure is. Perhaps someone who played D1 will know what mysteries this object holds. It does give a pretty nice view, though. And there was some mysterious, suspicious dirt out here. Don't quite know what this is. Anyways, if you're not interested in reaching the other artifacts you can find among us, there's a much smaller Z-climb you can do to get to the other side. It turns out that you can safely enter from the left or right of the front side, but not the center. That was also a painful discovery, but a little less painful because the climbing to get to this height is significantly lower. Smaller than even the Z-climb to get to the arch originally. You want to make sure that you come in a little bit below the ceiling level. Keep a bit to the left and you will encounter the push barrier. But hopefully you'll be able to get through before it runs out. If you don't, you'll have to reset your IRB point. But luckily you can just jump from the archway, and as long as you don't spend much time on the ground, you'll respawn out there after you set your point again. That's another reason I like to use the archway. At this point I would say that we've about moved to Phase 3. The phase where a mistake causes a lot of pain and perhaps having to do the entire thing over again. At least at the Z climbing step, which is probably the majority of it. At this point, we're just redoing the route we've already done, but with more consequences for failure. So let's get some suitable music up. Well, now things are a little bit different, so let's take some time to explain. If you're using the mountaintop climbing strat, you're going to need ammo. So, drain your heavy to about half and equip 2 empty specials. At this point, wait about 30 seconds and you'll get your petty ammo. Now you can just use a little explosives to boost your jump. Jump backwards a bit and you can land on top of the invisible ring. Then just jump over to the entrance. And now you just have to hit that same IRB you hit before. Just drop down onto this rock, strafe left, get teleported, strafe again, and if you see this, congratulations! You have almost made it. Unfortunately, if you don't precisely hit the edge, you will get teleported back. This is what happened the first time we tried, using a ghost set directly in the middle. Alright! Wait, what? Before we witness success, let's see what to do in the case of small failures. Let's say you fail to die to the load. You're now trapped inside of the startup threshold. Luckily, there are 2 ways to escape without dying. The first is to simply run back and race past this door before it spawns. If you fail, you can always just try it again, and eventually you'll probably succeed. Then just go back through the intangible wall up top, and you'll be good to try again. If you're having difficulty with that, you can jump into this archway here, and you'll die to the load and spawn back outside of the door. Now let's give this one more go. Give it about 4 seconds, and if you're still there, congratulations! Now it's time for the stressful part.
We good?
Alright,
I'm sure.
3,
Okay,
2,
let's go.
1, go.
To get the final Autorez, you need to have a 5 or less man team beat the Totems encounter. And there's nothing that you can do other than to sit back and hope they succeed. Because if they don't, you have to start from the very beginning. But I'm sure it'll be fine. Remember to occasionally swap armor pieces, because we may be here for a while. Whew, alright. I am in Thunderdome. Yeah, that's real nice. If you make it this far, take some time to enjoy the scenery. it's not likely you'll make it out this way again. Make sure that anyone that leaves does so by changing characters so you don't get dragged to orbit accidentally. If you're willing to 4-man totems, or perhaps even 3-man, you can get more people out to the Thunderdome. Simply leave one out at the first IRB spot, and once the encounter is complete, you can have a second join. You can get everyone except for perhaps the last Titan if we can figure out a Z-climbing workaround. Otherwise, up to 4 people. Of course, everyone that makes it with this route will have to be on a Warlock. Or perhaps an insanely motivated hunter. Now that we're down here, we can see just how precise those shots needed to be. I believe the darkness dimension debuff is what prevents us from setting our ghost there. And it's not even the full length of this little outcrop at the end. So you really gotta land it on the edge. Looking back up, you can see that as soon as I get the debuff, I lose sight of everyone. And as soon as I'm out, I gain it again. After hanging around for a while, I decided to start doing the dangerous testing. The sort of stuff that might have kicked me back to the default. And that's when this happened. You can see the glowing Thunderdome. Wait. What? Maybe. What is this? This what? Okay. So I can't shoot this. I am recording. I can't grenade it. Oh yeah, that's a good point. Let's see my Ontop. Nope. It turns out that surrounding the Thunderdome area, there is a huge invisible ground that is also intangible to all bullets, grenades, and anything you might use to mark it. That means that, well, the target that we were aiming for looked like this. In reality, all we needed to do was hit something in about this area. So, as long as your height is about right and you miss by a wide enough margin, you're basically guaranteed to get it. And those many hours of attempts would have been entirely unnecessary if we had simply known this one thing. But that's the nature of exploration. You don't really know what's there until you go. At least since we've figured this out, you won't have to suffer in the same way. And if anyone is crazy enough to make it here themselves, do let me know in the comments.